Welcome to The Lost Signals Discusses Film and TV. Using the revolutionary Manzur-Ramosi Thurlow scale,
or MONS,
we scrupulously review these art forms with an emphasis on narrative structure. Join us for another entertaining episode.
Hello, and welcome back to The Lost Signals Discusses Film and Television. I am Chris Morgan. I'm here with my colleague, Stephen Ramosi.
How you doing?
Jonathan Ian Manzur.
How you doing?
Scott Thurlow.
Greatest trumpet player in Chicago.
And today we are reviewing, or we're discussing Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. It's a film that hit Netflix. Today's the 18th of December 2020, and it hit
as of this recording, today. It came out today.
Today, it's based upon an August Wilson play. And does anybody have an interesting log line or a funny log line?
I feel like we thought of one earlier, but then sort of like maybe it's not necessarily applicable or needed in this instance. Maybe Chris, you just tell about the plot.
All right, I'm going to tell about the plot. Basically, it takes place in one day. It's a hot day in Chicago, and Ma Rainey's going in there to record some songs. And this movie takes place in basically two avenues. One is her band that's backing her, and one of her trumpet player, her horn player, Levy, really is kind of a little bit of a show off. Really,
played by Chadwick, by the way.
Played by Chadwick Boseman. Yeah. And he's a bit of a hot shot, and he's just trying to sell his music and get out there. And then you've got Ma Rainey, who's played by Viola Davis. And she's a no-nonsense woman. To be a woman and to be a Black woman in that age, basically it's like she had nothing, they were recording she was in there, she was basically calling the shots, because the record company Paramount wanted her to record some songs, and she enforced her will to get what she wanted when she wanted it. And then things kind of come to a head as Levy's problem with the band leads to a rather disturbing conflict. And Ma Rainey goes about, gets what she wants and goes about, when I say her day. This is the reason I'm kind of being vague about this, is because I know we're going to discuss it, but
that is the plot. There's nothing to be vague about.
That is the plot, but we're going to flesh it out a little more. But there's a couple things. I just want to first do a quick plug that if anybody has any questions on anything blues, check out Bill Wyman's Blues Odyssey. This has been my Bible for a long time. And somehow Ma Rainey, slipped out from a lot of, was out of everybody's radar. Those of us figure, like, we've heard her name, we don't know, we wonder why we don't know more. First of all, she did influence Bessie Smith and Janis Joplin. But an interesting thing is Paramount, what they're recording for Paramount actually owned a furniture company as well. And these were supposed to be recordings to sell with their record players with furniture, which is why the quality's spotty, and which is why they're really, really, really hard to find. So really, and at the time, records like this were called race records, race labels, which are a way to sell Black music to white people, or more importantly, Black music back to Black people. But also, as in my limited research here, it also was a bit of a commodity, in that it was also, like I said, these things were basically freebies with furniture. Maybe not specifically the movie we're seeing today, but I'm just giving you an idea I found it really fascinating. I mean, I know why it wasn't included. There was a play, and these were aside from the points. But knowing this now, after we watched the film and I watched the making of it and doing this, a lot of the film clicks in a way. It's not like it didn't click before. I'm giving this thing a 3. I adored this film. But I wanted to give a little backstory because I figured now is probably the best time, but also kind of give some context to the plot and a lot of stuff we might be talking about.
I actually found that I didn't know that. I can see it because people would look at that thing. You sold records to sell furniture as so unbelievable. That's like, why they make up this stupid fact? And then what is a truth?
Yeah.
Is
Truth is stranger than fiction.
But I'm a huge fan of the author August Wilson.
August Wilson.
And this has granted, I enjoy theatrical productions of plays, and I really enjoy films that attempt to capture that. So this spoke to me. If you don't like theater play style films, I actually saw one reviewer critique it for it. No, but it could be if you don't enjoy it, it'll be a detraction. If you do enjoy it, it will be. Yeah. But the tightness of the narrative is because it was meant to be performed on the stage, and it's a talented writer and crafted into a good representation on the film. So I think that I'm with you, Chris, on right now I'm leaning towards a 3 unless someone makes a good argument for dropping down to a 2.
I'm leaning towards a super strong 2, and it actually weirdly maybe because of that very fact, and I think I might tie it into style that because it's based on a stage play that's adapted for the modern screen, and it like very early on it's obvious that like it feels and it's shot as if it were a stage play, but I think that's a bit more style. Like now it's rock solid as hell, don't get me wrong, and I did love it through and through from start to finish. But I think because of that, like the plot is basically Ma, coming in and
Ma's not at all the plot of it. Right. It's about Chadwick Boseman.
It's her like at the backdrop
collapsing as a character as his dreams are shattered in front of him. It's beautiful.
I'm not disagreeing with that, but I'm saying like
I would disagree with that a little bit.
But that's kind of the plot.
I'll talk about it.
Like it's weird because like I don't want to say like not much is happening, but that's the central conflict. The stakes aren't super high, but they also are emotionally high, which I think like comes into play with other questions as well that we'll get to. But all I'm saying is like to me, the only temperament I might have is to back up just a minor point and give it a very strong 2 to plot, but I'm not necessarily married to that either. That's the only like again minor chink in the armor of this work.
Which is what is your minor chink in the armor?
It's that like not much is happening. Like it's the tension of it, which is the strong point, the character work, right? The themes, all that stuff we'll get to, I think, is more important than the framework is there, and it's perfectly serviceably fine. But I to answer your question, like to me, a lot of it will flow into other questions, which are going to be super strong. Just like again, as much enthusiasm as I have, like as you guys have, it just to somewhat walk it back critically, super strong 2, just not quite enough for a 3. But I'm not married to it. So with that, Stevo, why don't you take over?
I mean, I think I am probably going to give this a 3, along with you guys, Chris and Ian. I do think that Ma's part of this, especially, she's the one who's having the clash with management. He's the one that, and then
clash with
Levy's character is clashing with everybody else. Like there,
true.
He's got his own problems with, she is the one that actually talks back to the management, stands up for herself. He only ends up like talking about how he is going to handle them, but the only people that he lashes out against are the other black people that he's interacting with, which this is I'll probably be getting into themes with this in a minute here, but like
you can't help it, right? It bleeds over, Steve-O. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that certainly both parts are, and what I like about this is they're so like perfectly, they like are separate, and then they come together and clash. Between Chadwick and Viola's parts of the movie, they come together, they kind of clash with each other, then they separate again, and then they come back together. And I think the movie like weaves them like in and out of contention with each other really, really well. And I think that's a big part of why I like this plot so much. It really, um, gives you a lot of looks at how these interactions work with between all the characters that are involved, including, um, the ghosts of Levy's past and how they affect his current mood and things like that. So I think I am going to give it a 3 for those reasons, and yeah, that's how I'm looking at it.
I'm just going to defend this. Yes, but a lot happens.
And a
See,
small
your
stage
point holds about the interweaving. I'm going to talk about that in themes quite a bit. The braiding of all these thematic elements, but you're seeing the hope of the future dashed over the course of one day, as he Chadwick's character oversteps a little bit, but he's also confident in his own skills, and then both from the generational clash, the economic clash between the owner of the studio, and he's legitimately screwed over by record companies, which is a first in history of record companies abusing
Right.
black artists. But and you see him fall to the depths of and ruin his entire future. It's actually a great character study.
Okay.
As shown in the documentary Back to the Future, he gets screwed over by the.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, yes, there's a long history of that, but I think you guys actually convinced me. So again, sight unseen. I know I'm familiar with the author, the screenplay author, because of Fences and like the adaptations. But assuming this is a 3-act play and adapted for the screen, then I think you guys convinced me because every act is strong. Now, like maybe just me being like, try to like tamper down a little bit and like being a more quote unquote objective critic. But I think having you guys talked out your points that like, yeah, like whatever cracks, if there are any, are like super thin and very few and far between. So I think I will switch to a 3 because I think I think it's a very clear 3-act structure, at least to me. Now again, I don't know if that's true of the original screenplay. Maybe it's 4 acts, doesn't really matter. The way they've done it in this film, I think yes. Give me a 3.
All right, cool. I mean, because I really think it's interesting.
I wasn't opposed to it. You guys convinced me, talked it out, and yeah, I'm bumping up.
I mean, the thing is, they're both. It's so funny because they're both coming from the same place, but she's got age and experience and knows that you can't play nice.
Knows the biz.
Yeah, I mean, she knows the biz. I mean, damn, she's a fascinating woman. I'm sorry, I'll stop going generally about music there and go to Ian with themes.
Boy, howdy. This is quite a dense work, as much of what I've read from Augustus. It's Augustus, right?
August.
Yeah, he's Augustus Caesar to me. I think but you have generational conflicts, particularly older generations, newer generations having that ambition. And I'm going to be perfectly honest that certain things that are happening in my life right now, because I'm a little bit older than Chadwick Boseman's character Levy, but I understand that strain of wanting to be like, I've lived long enough that I want to define my own identity, but being constrained by older generations. I understand that completely. I think a lot of people within the millennials nowadays can feel that. I think that's why this movie resonated so much with me. But beyond that, you have the generational conflicts, and also Ma Rainey got hers, and she has to protect hers because there are people preying upon her constantly. But should she sacrifice some of her good? she does a little bit for her nephew, but who much less talented than Levy is. But you understand her; like, she's looking out for her own. So, and also you have the older gentlemen who are the other musicians, and the conflicts there. You have comments about religion. Why should I believe in God if shit? You have race relations here. You have economic relations here. It's such so. August attempted to capture with his 10 plays an idea of Black America through different generations, through different decades. And this is 1920s. And I think with both Fences, which we've reviewed previously, and this one, he does a bang up job of illustrating a piece of time and specifically a sense of subculture of Black America where they're what they had to fight against. And I think I was very impressed by it.
Yes, I mean, I'm giving it a strong one of, if not like equal with some other things we'll get to, and it probably flows into style as well, just because again the nature of the story and how they how it was adapted. But yeah, it's fucking impressive as hell that this movie is an hour and 35 minutes long, and it packs so much into it with the characters, with their viewpoints, with their dynamics, with each other, with the tension that it that is kept up, and sort of like now character X talking to character Y and Z, and like they each have their own viewpoint and they're at odds with each other, but also they're in some kind of agreement with each other at the same time. And that's super impressive. And that speaks to the character work. It speaks to the realism of it. Like you said, August trying to capture the experience and the lives of this community and in each in a different era, and specifically in the Roaring 20s in 1927, right? Making records, blues records in Chicago, with the tensions of ostensibly like like a group of people, a little camaraderie who should be like all with each other, but they had got their own issues and struggles and motivations and stuff, right? And all of that. And yeah, it's super impressive. Like there was no way I was ever not going to give Themes a 1, because it's just like so tightly wound. Like, yeah, it's a Barthian braid, maybe, like, not maybe, like certainly seems to be, but one of the best ones that I've seen recently because of the nature of it. And because like you got some cynicism to it, right? You got some like positive, some optimism to it. You got some realism. It's all thrown in there. And again, in the exchanges and the dynamic and the chemistry between all the characters and their viewpoints, and mindsets, etc. So 1 for me, huge 1. Go ahead, Betty.
I think I like the juxtaposition between Ma Rainey and Levy, and these other guys that are with Levy are session players. They're backing bands. They're there to do their job.
Their lives.
Get on with their lives. And then you have like the corporate white guys,
the AR suits, and
who are absolutely obtuse and wouldn't know if they know how to fuck people over. As we saw at the end, what he did with Levy's song, which is but
Chris, I just say that freeze frame at the end on the white guy is the best ending to a film I've seen.
Because Levy's trying to sell songs, and the producer there says he'll buy him. That's not what the people want. But they had this whole thing earlier talking about like, black music. I mean, even then they were talking about, selling black music to white people and, how you go about this. I'm not, there's not much more that I can add than just the observations that I like the way they compartmentalize these things. You had the two extremes. You had the people who just wanted to go and do their jobs and, go home. And then you had the record execs who, long history, racist or not, of fucking over people who are much more talented than them. So, but I'm giving
assholes who are also like semi, vaguely racist, of course.
Yeah, but I'm definitely gonna give Themes a 1. There's more. Go ahead, Steve-O.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you guys. Obviously, the themes in this are really strong, and I think first and foremost, that's what this play is about: is addressing these themes and talking about them from these different points of view. Uh, Getting the point of view of Ma, who has had some success because she has been so protective of her success, and the point of view of Levy, who's just coming up and doesn't really know how to game the system or play the game, and gets
Right, but
screwed over.
got a feel for it, but he's not as seasoned as
Oh,
mine.
he's naive.
Yeah, I mean, no, he says that he knows what's going on, but he clearly doesn't. And like, um, that's one of his problems is he's not willing to take advice from any of these people who have been in the game for a lot longer than him and whatever. Like that's the way it goes sometimes with young upstarts. I did want to mention that I should have mentioned this in plot, I guess, but you know, how did he not get kicked out? This is the one perhaps crack in the plot. How did he not get kicked out when he tried to stab the first guy? And then they let him keep playing, and he goes and stabs.
Actually stab him because it was Ma's choice. It was her.
Ma
She
wanted
said the
him
final
out.
word. No,
I don't know. Anyway,
it's a humorous-ish point, but sure, like, go on.
that's but yeah, in terms of the themes, it's really I think you're right to bring up, Ian, first and foremost the racial issues, and then the economic issues, which kind of put this on a graph, or like a four different quadrants of like the type of people that are involved in this um, film, and before that the play. And I think it does a really good job of talking about all that. The really violent history that um, that Levy has with his mother. That was done upon his mother, and
Which informs him and his philosophy and so
yeah.
forth.
Steve, if you don't mind me, I watched a documentary on Malcolm X recently, and he has a not quite parallel one to one, but a very similar story to Levy, which I found very interesting, because they moved from the South to Minnesota, were kind of chased out by like chasing the American dream in the North, and then local racists in the North basically drove them out and like took over their farm. So it's a very kind of similar parallel, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that story was based on this actual guy that was in Ma Rainey's band or not, or I would doubt it.
I was going to get to that, yeah.
And that makes you wonder if it was actually based on like Malcolm X's story. 'Cause when was this written? I don't know when this is written, but
I think we looked it up. I'm sorry, we did some research, like you guys might know, Chris and or E.
It was performed, I believe, 82 or 84 first. So it might have been written previously, but that would have been after.
yeah,
regardless.
after Malcolm X for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's really interesting. Just going into all those different types of ways to look at the themes of this, and being able to view it from the two characters, from Ma Rainey's eyes and from Levy's eyes, two people in very different places, is interesting. So
Now, Chris, just to address something that you mentioned, Chris, correct me, or like fill in the gaps. That Ma Rainey, of course, was a real person, a real recorder, a real blues singer. Levy's character was fictionalized, was introduced in the play by August. Like he was not like part of the band, but of course he represents everything we just said, like a side of it. So it's like half biography and half not, in a sense, like half historical fiction, but also based upon like
based on true story.
Yeah, exactly. So just to be clear about that, like that's where his character.
Yeah, because there's always going to be embellishments because there's a lot of things. I mean, even when I was going over when I was watching the making of, and from the little bit I've read about Ma Rainey, is they were talking about that when the costume designer and the production designers were looking up for pictures of Ma Rainey, and they were talking about Bessie Smith a lot. They found hundreds of Bessie Smith, and
Not
what,
so much of Ma.
8 or 10 of Ma Rainey, yeah. So a lot of I'm assuming what a lot of what was put in here was based on stories of who she was,
A hybrid
her
of
her attitude. I mean, because she was the daughter of uh, uh part of a minstrel group, and she and her husband, when she got married, I mean, there's a whole gypsy quality, traveling vaudeville thing with her family. So there would be enough to extrapolate from. But again, if you were going to create a foil like in Levy, to pull something from like maybe Malcolm X's history or some forth, just to get across the points.
Yeah.
And again, I am gonna highly recommend even the making of it, because they have an interview with August Wilson's widow, who actually is one of the producers on this movie. And I'm sorry if I'm all over the place. This movie basically hit so many spots for me, including when the the trombonist is like, 1, 2, you know what to do.
Yeah.
My jazz teacher Frank DeSulo would do that like before every number. I mean, this movie hit so many, I mean, I was laughing, I was crying, I was bopping my head, I was so yeah, I'm gonna shut up now. And
One to themes.
one to themes, and we're moving on to Steve-O with antagonist.
All right. Yeah, I mean, the antagonist, I guess, personified to some extent is the head of the studio, but
Suits.
really just, I would say, kind of and this is going to be part of the theme, but like
Johnny Coyne as Student is his name.
Yes,
in the film.
Student, that's right, or Sturdivant, I think.
Student, yes.
But it's just kind of the ingrained racism of the time is really what's, especially, well, I guess for everybody, right? It's like it shapes Levy's entire personhood. His relationship with his parents and what happened to them. And Ma is like entirely wrapped up in not allowing herself to be pushed around by these guys. So she has put so much of herself into like that I feel like it becomes such a big part of her personality. So yeah, and I mean, like, you can feel the press of that like coming down on them every time that they try to tell her that they can't like get her nephew can't be
I'm
on.
not gonna do this or that, and she's like, "You're
or they
gonna
didn't get the
fucking do
coke, or they didn't like whatever. It's just the little ticks, what today you'd call like microaggressions, right? Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
and her response to that, and then you get Chadwick's like over correction, his lashing out against the guys in the band who are really just trying to like give him a
Do
little
their job, man.
well, they're like giving him a hard time, but like they're trying to do it as like friends in like a good-natured manner, and he's so wrapped up in that part of his personality, for good reason, that like he can't get past that part of himself, and that is all just comes down to like the oppressive racism of the time and the societal
the time.
The structural racism of well,
Even more so.
surely it's I wouldn't say a different thing now, but it's displayed in a different way. You're not like having like roving gangs of white people go into
You're not?
and raping women. No.
I mean, that's tragic backstory, but like I get what you mean. Like, sorry, go ahead. If continue or finish off your analysis.
I don't know. Maybe you are. Ian will pull up some articles for you guys, and we'll talk about it, I guess. But like, anyway, yeah. I mean, it's exactly what was. These are the things that are eating at them, and I think they do a really good job of um, making those things into a powerful antagonist.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Like, right, like it's so because of the stage play nature of it and the way it's written and adapted, right? So each character, like specifically Levy and Ma herself as well, like to a somewhat lesser degree, right? They have tensions within themselves. Like it's Coleman Domingo plays Cutler, right? He's sort of like the de facto almost like speaker of like the session band, right? And Levy's almost like almost an intruder in a sense. Like again, like you said, Steve, is the upstart. So he's in there. He's like basically throwing fire. Like he's like messing. He's trying to be like, listen, we can do so much better. Like I got a vision for my band, like for my music. I'm trying to do my own thing. You guys are stuck in your own like just perpetual cogwheel.
If I may, if you're talking about identity, their identity is as Ma Rainey's band. Their identity is wrapped up with the success of Ma Rainey. Levy is attempting to craft his own identity.
Their identity as such, right? Like, and I think that's a good antagonist.
Yeah.
He's like, you guys have no ambition, like, and then of course, Steve. So this is for you and me, just specifically, and maybe jumping the gun on secondary, but Glenn Truman, who plays Toledo, of course, who was in Fargo, like, he's like sort of the old like
more stuff though. He's great.
Yeah, like, and he's like the old like raggedy guy. He's the oldest member of their crew. He's like, listen, I understand where you're coming from, but also like there's other shit happening, right? So I'm just saying, like, all that stuff, like, sort of combines, like, it a great revolving dynamic, I guess I want to say, of tensions between these characters and these people, like, regardless of the situation. Yeah, like, and then at large Steve-O versus like the white suits at the studio being like, you got to make this record, and they're like, listen, we'll make the record on my own terms in our own time, and like, there's a tension there. So like, it doesn't, like, all I'm saying is like, no matter how you slice it, however you like, peg it, if you will, wherever you put it, the tension and thus the antagonism works, and every character is antagonized to some degree by something, if not themselves or each other. So obviously, to me, that's a very strong one. That is all.
So I disagree with it because I think it's actually power dynamics here that Ma Rainey has gotten to the point where she can talk. Let me finish before you interrupt me.
All right, good.
Scott, you cannot at all ever complain about someone interrupting you. And I purposely did that, teach you a lesson on that. What we're working with is power dynamics. Ma Rainey actually has everything Levy wants. She can dictate terms to her white bosses. She can say no to them. She can say, I'm not doing this until you give it. Levy has sought nothing but to be able to dictate terms in that situation. Yes. And thus his conflict is attempting to create a craft, get to the point of, and he feels on his own merits he can achieve that. He looks at the other three band members as having given up that, and that they're living off of Ma Rainey. Ma Rainey has the woman he wants. Ma Rainey has the ability to say no to the white people who he hates deep down for righteous reasons. And I think that conflict of not thinking he has the talent to achieve the heights he wants to, and is being denied by society. And yeah, and in the end, he tries to shut it off, and he gets screwed over by the white people. But I think that the major conflict is between Ma Rainey having achieved his dream and him grasping and failing to. And I thought it was again, though that might be my personal bias because I feel that sort of way in my life nowadays.
No, I don't disagree. I think it's all there. So,
Well, once again, we got that juxtaposition between Ma Rainey and Irvin, and Levy and Sturdivant. I'm like looking at it right now, and I still can't pronounce it. Sturdivant. In that the Ma Rainey and Irvin look like they're chums, and there's some great things that happen. Like, in other words, like when she's just like, I want my Coke, and he's like, oh, we didn't get a chance to whatever, and she's like, fine, and he goes to give money. She goes, I don't need you to buy me my Coke, and she sends and she said, she definitely has agency. And some, I believe it's the woman that's with her is like, oh, Irvin's a good guy. And she goes, really? He's invited me over. He's been my manager for 6 years, invited me over exactly once to sing for some white people.
Yeah.
Whereas Levy and the other white guy have a much more confrontational thing. I mean, he is trusting in this guy. He might not trust or like white people, but he's trusting in this guy, and he should. It's just like you're looking at two people, fighting the same overall antagonist, and one knowing how the game's played and what their agency is, and the other one thinking, I don't have the agency yet, but as soon as I step on this guy's shoulders, I can have that agency. No, it was just, it's a really interesting, this narrative is so smartly structured in order to look at the, the discrepancies with race and economics, and have these two characters and how they approach, and have two different studio white guys, and they're having individual relationships, because Irvin's the intermediary between Stuyvesant or whatever, I cannot fucking remember his name. So Levy didn't have that. I mean, it's just such a well constructed narrative. I'm gonna give it a 1.
Yep. Okay. I think that's ones for everybody, right? And
Yep.
I just wanted to briefly touch on. So, Ian, are you saying that Ma is the antagonist of this? Like, is
I view
Levy's antagonist or no?
I view Levy as the protagonist, and that might be a personal bias, I admit, going into it, because I actually identified quite a bit with his struggles there. Now, you could view Ma as a protagonist as well. That's fine, but I feel that Ma is, of all the people in there, Levy's antagonist. So I think she has the life he wants to have, and in a way, and he thinks that talent alone can give me that level, and he's denied that. But that's my argument for it. But I could be wrong.
That's really interesting. You could even look at him as Ma's antagonist if you wanted to look at it that way too, because he is literally trying to steal everything that she has. He wants her fame, he wants her girl, he wants her, like, everything.
Capitalism is a zero-sum game.
Of course, yeah. I mean, like, it is an interesting thing. I honestly, I look at them both as protagonists, and perhaps they are antagonists to each other, but I think they both have their equal claim to the protagonist throne in this one. I think so. I just wanted to clarify that with you before we moved on.
Yeah, no, but because I personally identify with Levy's struggles, that's why.
I get you.
Again, I could see you identifying with other characters, and that's perfectly fine.
Yeah,
I think that's the genius and brilliance of this. Like, because you can make an argument for both, and like sort of can see them, in a seesaw almost battle in a sense of the power thing you said. Yeah. Either way, it's got to be a strong one, I think.
Yep, I think we're doing all around, right?
I think we're doing that. Yes.
And just for it's so funny you said you recognize with Levy, in that it's like I kind of feel like I was Levy at one point, and now I'm kind of like I'm not even Ma, because if I were Ma, we would have much better equipment than we do.
Sure.
No, it was something Ian said, or maybe Ian Steve, when the conversation you just had was just like when I was in college and I was learning jazz and blues and first learned about August Wilson. I wanted to be a film composer. I figured at some point I'd go to New York or LA, blah, 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 blah. Now at like 51, I want to write that 3.5-minute earworm that gets licensed to hell. Like, that is my goal. So it's like I shot for Rainey, and I'm like, I'm right what those studio musicians are. I want I want to make a living doing what I want to love, that I love doing, and that's so it's. I was just funny. I just wanted to build off what you guys were talking
Chris,
about.
just jerk off a hallelujah, and we'll be good.
There you go.
I'm doing it, man. I'm working on it. And so, Scott, that
Anyway.
will leave you with, that brings you to protagonist, man.
Yeah, so I think it's super interesting because we just covered a lot of ground. Like, you can make an argument like either way, and like I'm gonna give them both credit. Like, at least that's how I'm viewing it. Now, whether or not you identify like you're more, invested or more like intrinsically related to X character or Y, I think it's sort of moot because they're both great portrayals, and like that's where a lot of the tension comes from, right? It's Ma Rainey's, it's Viola as Ma power struggle with the suits at the studio, right? And then like Chadwick as Levy like sees that, like knows that can be the case, and is aspiring to it, but then he's at odds with her, right? And like, he has like a side deal. People are like, Irvin said my songs are good and I get my own band, and then obviously capitalistically he's screwed over in the end. Like, sure, but like to me it's maybe not a 50-50.
Also, I assume in jail, right? He did kill somebody.
Sure. I mean, maybe they covered it up. Like, the film doesn't make it clear. Like, who knows? But all I'm saying is, like, it's like a maybe 55-45 or like split or something like that.
They're not spending any money on.
Maybe if Ma
Yeah,
says
they're like, let him go to jail so we can steal his songs even cheaper. I'm going to take this $25 out of his pocket.
They certainly did that.
It depends. Like, if Ma was like, you're going to cover this murder up and it's going to be on the studio money, they'd be like, okay. If she's like, you're not going to do it, they'd be like, okay, we'll leave him hanging in the wind, right? But I'm saying either way, to me, like I'm going to cut it up like close to dual protagonist duties. That is Viola as Ma and Chadwick as Levy. And I think, like, again, that's where a lot of the great tension comes from, great character work, and everything else sort of like builds around it. But yeah, I'm giving him both a strong one. Incredible performances when they're not together in the scene, like they just command the scene that they're in. And when they are, like, they're just, it's a movable force, unstoppable object, or reversing, whatever that phrase is. That's what it felt like, because they have just that much presence to them and bring those characters to life so well. So super strong one. And
yeah, I have to say this is pretty amazing that I think I like Chadwick Boseman a lot in his other movies. This is maybe his most electric performance done while he's undergoing treatment for colon cancer.
Now that we know that, like,
So there are better performances, but this is his best one while he was under colon
Just
cancer.
his best one while getting treated for colon cancer. No,
I'm just being linguistically.
It's amazing that his possibly most electric performance was done while he was undergoing treatment for colon cancer, which I don't think he really told anybody about.
No.
So it probably looked like he just dropped a bunch of weight for this part, and like, he came in. I mean, he looks pretty gaunt in this movie. I will say that, and like, but there is no the life and energy behind his performance is there every moment. It's
electric,
fucking incredible. And Viola Davis also does an amazing job with Ma Rainey, the character Ma Rainey. I think that these two make a great, if you're going to have like two protagonists, which I do think, for me, it's a dual protagonist. If you're going to have these two protagonists and have them spend like about as much time apart, like not on screen, probably more time not on screen together than they have on screen together, it's incredible to get this kind of performance from both of them, and to have this kind of script that allows them both such like big moments. This whole movie takes place over what, a few hours,
10 hours,
like an afternoon
or less.
And there's like just huge character arcs that happen, like, interesting character movements that happen and things like that. So I got to give them both a ton of credit, and protagonist a strong one.
Right on.
I agree.
You good, Chris?
Yeah, I absolutely positively agree. Yeah.
I thought you were gonna tell him, but yeah, strong one is hell for sure. No matter how you slice it.
So that brings me to supporting characters, and we've mentioned them. We've mentioned a lot of supporting characters, and I'm not really going to belabor this except to say that I think we have, up until now, pretty much shown how basically every supporting character feeds into each of our protagonist dynamic. I'm going to leave it to you guys to flesh out, specifically because I'm going to be all over the place again. So I'm going to give it a 1.
Give it a
And
1
say, I'm going to give it a 1 because I think all the supporting characters say so much about the themes, about one another, about the conflicts between Ma and the studio, and Levy and the studio, and then with each other. I mean, there's the networking with all the supporting characters between Levy and Ma is like exquisite. So I'm gonna throw it to you guys to point out specific things that you liked. Or
If I may, so you have the 3 session musicians: Toledo, Culver, and the other guy.
Slow drag.
Flow drag.
But that's the thing is, he's the other guy, and in a sense, you either become Ma Rainey, or you end up as the teacher academic in Toledo, the micromanager of Culver, or the almost unnecessary third character. But I mean necessary because he's crafts the band. But I don't remember, aside from him interrupting the sex scene, I don't remember a thing he contributes. So I was saying that it's interesting that they have those dynamics there, and Toledo's the man. I adored him as a character.
I mean, of course, like, so Glenn Truman, I've always thought him, like, he's amazing in everything. Like, I don't want to say he's typecast, but he often plays a similar-ish role because he's so good at it. And this script is specifically, like, gives him such a good version of that. But yeah, like, Cutler was good too. Like, and it goes back to the themes, and maybe it will also forward into dialogue, right? Like, each of these characters is fully fleshed out, right? Like, they give them, where they're coming from. They're not one-dimensional. Like, they have life and breath to them. And so therefore, when they get into, like, the philosophical conversations, when they butt heads with each other, right? Like, it's believable, and they're making good points, and, like, they're trying to, like, do the best they can to convince each other, like, listen, man, this is how it's going to be. This is how it is. This is how, this is how you should do it. Like, trust me, like, I lived this life. And Chadwick's, especially Chadwick as Levy's like, nah, man, I get it, but I'm not going to live that life, right? Like, I'm going to do Ma's life. And Ma's like, you can never have my life. Like, shit like that. But yeah, collectively, the cast does a great job. Like, again, and you're right, Sivo, or one of you said, like, you have to give credit to the original source material that allows these characters that are, like, they orbit around, of course, but they're not just there just to be there, except for Slow Drag. Sure, he is there just to be there. Like,
His name is that for a reason.
yeah, right. Like, yeah, I mean, it's sort of obvious, but the Toledo, Cutler, everything, right? They just fill out this world, this little cadre, right? So it makes so much sense. It's so organic, and I'm giving them all a very strong 1, especially for Ken Truman, though, because he's so incredible and everything, and especially in this.
Yeah, Toledo, great. I love Glenn Turman and everything that he's in. He's an awesome actor, and you're right. We both did just watch Fargo season 4, and he's,
To be fair, but
as Dr. Senator, which is one of the best names ever. Neither a doctor nor a senator, it's just his name. But I also wanted to give a shout out to Dusty May, is the Ma's girlfriend who Levy goes after in the. I think she did a very, very good job as the actress did a very good job of that part.
I agree.
And also Sylvester, the nephew, has, like, I don't know about you guys. I don't think he, like, his part was whatever. I don't really care, but I was like, yeah, Sylvester, when he got it right. When he finally got it right, I was like, yeah, fuck yeah, he got it.
But just like life, it wasn't plugged in.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, I thought that the supporting characters did a really good job, especially the band. I think the 2 execs did a good job being their part. One being obviously slimy, and one being like,
Toady.
toady. Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's a good way to describe it. So I thought that those actors did a good job in that part, and um, kind of showed two different aspects of the racism that the characters are facing in the movie. So I am going to give it a 1 for supporting, and that's it for me.
All right, so it's ones all around, which brings us to Ian with dialogue.
Oh my. Was this some great? Granted, it's play style dialogue. If you are into that, this is the movie for you. If you're not, you're gonna have your troubles. But I loved it. I thought that there was a rhythm to this movie that matched the musical quality. That's, in fact, this might be going to style more so, but I'll talk about it now. Is that I almost felt that this was a lot of preludes to what in a musical they would burst out into song to, because there is that musical style there. And then there's the dramatic set pieces, especially with Chad Boseman, who just knocks out of the park with those. Overall, I was incredibly impressed, and I would love to see this on stage, actually. I think it would be a great performance. Whoopi Goldberg actually played Ma Rainey in the revival of it. So,
Nice.
as difficult to work with black woman, yeah, that's great role for her. Nonetheless, I'll pass it along.
No, I mean, of course, I agree. Like, you're right. Like, it's going to depend upon like whether or not you like the play, the stage style, right? And you might be probably maybe the biggest fan, like into it. Maybe I don't know. Maybe you guys as well. But the fact is, at least the point is to me, is that yeah, it works. It's snappy and like they're clipping on each other, right? Like, and it flows along. There's not a dead wasted moment at all. Again, goes back to what we just said, like characters just exchange, doing barbs, doing philosophical discussions, right? Like blowing up at each other and then chilling down for a moment, like when it calls for that. Like the pacing, I guess we hadn't mentioned that earlier, in terms of dialogue exchanges, I think is so fucking spot on. Like, yeah, and it doesn't feel like like so hyper clever realized, right? It still feels organic, even though you can sort of like see behind the curtain, if you will, that it's built, it's stylized dialogue because of that. But they make it work. They sell it so well, and it just flows along. You're just pulled along for the journey, and nowhere was I ever pulled out of it because of the dialogue. And so, super strong one as well.
Yeah, so like a lot of times on this show we talk about like whether or not the dialogue was realistic or naturalistic, right? Or natural. And there's something about uh stage dialogue, stage stage play dialogue that is not naturalistic, but I love it anyway. Right? It doesn't have to be, especially when it's done in this style. Like I really love the dialogue of this movie. It's obvious from like the first 5 minutes of the movie that this is based off of play. In fact, when I was watching it today, I watched it with my roommate, and he was like, "Is this a play?" And I was like, "I'm pretty sure, yeah." And then I looked it up, and I was like, "Yeah, it's a play." So I didn't know that before going into it, but yeah, I mean, like it's obvious when you're watching something that's based off of a stage play as opposed to a screenplay. It's written in a completely different style, but what you're really looking for in something like this, and in a stage play, or at least what I am, is good snappy dialogue that resonates, right? Like it's I'm looking for like more of a almost a I don't even know, but like there's something about the dialogue that's different than like trying to make it natural, and I don't want something natural when I'm watching a play or whatever. Yeah, so I love this. I love the style. That's all I'm going to say about it, and I'm going to turn it over.
Yeah, I love the dialogue. And I think the is played stage play dialogue. One of my favorite movies is Glengarry Glen Ross, and the whole thing about stage play dialogue is it's all about pacing, because unlike film, you don't have anything where you can sit there and follow the character down a lonely street and have, your cinematographer or the director tell a story. You've got to convey all
Got a
these
background, yeah.
ideas. And Ian, to your point about like the point where they might be breaking off into songs, there was that one scene where Chadwick Boseman Levy starts singing downstairs, and for a second I'm like, oh wait, wait, no, this isn't a musical, because right then and there, I figured, it really was kind of, building, it felt that was a natural place for it. So I agree with you guys 100%. The dialogue is just sublime. And the people who deliver the dialogue are just sublime. So, Stevo, why don't you continue with style?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the style of this comes from the blocking, because it's a stage play, right? Like, so there are small sets, like they're basically acting as though they only have a backdrop to work off of. Kind of exactly what you were just talking about, Chris. And like constricting it means that they have to do things a little bit differently, including the dialogue, which we just talked about, and including kind of I love how they do some interesting camera movement in this, like, because now it's a stage play with with the addition of the camera point of view, you can do interesting things. So there's a lot of like moving shots going on in this that were really cool, and obviously the music was great. I think that this is uh, up there in one of the more interesting visual movies that I've seen this year, which is strange because it's only like 2 rooms or whatever for the most part. But there's a lot going on with the camera that I thought was really cool, and like some might say too obvious maybe, but like I kind of liked that. I kind of liked what they were doing with it, and the costuming's really great.
The suits were spectacular.
Right. Yeah, exactly. You can see him behind. You can see Chadwick right behind me if you're watching this on YouTube. But yeah, I thought that the style was terrific, and I have to give it full marks for that. I've already said too much. I'll let you guys go on anything else that you have in the tank.
All right. I want to mention Branford Marcellus's score and everything he did to get these group of musicians to play something. None of these guys in the band, as far as I know, I maybe the bass player. No, I don't think any member of the band was actually a musician. And Chadwick Boseman wanted to know the fingering charts, because Branford's like, sure, I'll write out the fingering. So he's like, I just got my trumpet player from the Tonight Show to come out. Chadwick wants to learn trumpet. Chadwick learned trumpet. And I've always been a fan of Branford. God damn it. Speak, Chris. I've always been a fan of his. I think he's a tremendous human being. And I think he did a great job with the score. And I did mention Glengarry Glen Ross. He did not do that score, but I felt shades of it. Like the fact that the background of it, the jazz and blues chords, we're all right. We're all right there. And the costumes, the costume designer, the woman, there in the tent scene, there was 100 extras, and the woman who was the costume designer, whose name is blocking, she, as she was dressing the extras, she went out and told everybody what these costumes meant, why they were being dressed in such and such and such and such a way. So the verisimilitude in this is just because everybody working on this film loved it, and were so detail oriented about everything they did. And I know I just retreaded on some of the stuff you brought up, but it's some stuff that I learned in the documentary, and you know, um, it, so I mean that's why this movie sings the way it does, because you really have people in the know doing everything they can and explaining it to people, whether you're an actor pretending to be a piano player or whether you're an extra in a tent, what everything you do means. Which I think was, which, you know, when you're dealing with something like this, you've got that 10 concert, you know, is a very short piece in the film, said so much about the time and where they were. Two real quick things I want to bring up. Number one, that I meant to bring up before, the car accident Ma gets into, and the police officer. I would not be lying if I didn't say that my skin was crawling, you know, given the way current climate is today, that, wow. And number two, something that's come up, you know, lately in the zeitgeist, in the fact that we have an incomplete history of America and the Civil War. And it was actually brought up in One Mississippi. One of the characters is like, yeah, I'm from the North, and I grew up believing we were the good guys. And it's just like, no, the North was just as bad as the South in a lot of ways. Nobody, you know, to be honest, so I know I didn't bring it up before. I brought this down now because this film just hits every single beat possible. So I'm going to move it to you guys with the rest of the stuff. I'm going to shut up.
And it hits every note, of course. Like, of course I agree. Like, yeah. And like it ties into like maybe narrative slash dialogue we talked about. Like, it's obvious almost from the get-go, as one of you mentioned, like, yeah. So it's almost like, to me, it's always kind of amusing because it means like, what sets you need? Oh, we need a set for them to rehearse in. Like, yo, that's the one stage, if you will. Then we need Ma up there. Like, that's kind of pretty much it. Like, now, yes, it cuts to like, I'm glad you mentioned the car like accident scene, Chris, because that you know takes place. It's like scene 3 outside studio, like essentially, right? But for the most part, it's just a limited thing, like, and that's what allows the characters to breathe and live in that space, right? It's almost claustrophobic to an extent, but the way it's shot, like, it makes sense. And yeah, that's why it looks so good. And the lighting was fucking amazing. And yeah, the soundtrack is so incredible. Like, it just encapsulates that era and that feel so well. So yeah, again, excellently strong one. And because of the nature of it, and they managed to you know, like, encapsulate the feel and the tone of the original source material to make it great. So
just one comment, the moving pictures at the beginning, pun intended with that, but I actually thought that was really cool. And actually the idea that this was bookended by a moving picture and then the freeze frame actually worked really well for me. And also, by the way, I don't know if anyone brought this up while I was listening to you. The color scheme was amazing.
Oh yeah,
that's a good call. That's a very good call. Yeah,
that's a very good call.
the sepia tone.
Yes. Yep. Good looks.
Yeah.
I'm giving it a 1.
Yeah, apparently originally this play was supposed to take place in the wintertime. The director made an aesthetic choice that this would be in the summertime on a hazy day. Sorry, I watched that thing. It just
even Mom's like, it's hot as hell in the studio. She's like, it's hot. I need a Coke. I've got it in my family. Jesus Christ, I'm suffocating in here. All right, can't sing like this, you know.
And Coca-Cola is one of my my single favorite drink on the planet.
Ugh.
And I love it. And I'm watching her, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm ready to pause and run to Quick Check and grab a Coke.
Fair enough.
So Scott, if anybody else has anything to add, that looks like it's ones all around for style. And Scott, would you recommend Ma Rainey's Black Bottom?
Yes, I would, all around. Like, no matter what, again, like, maybe the only caveat is, as we mentioned, like, if you don't like films based on stage plays, but even if you like, fuck you, because this film is awesome. Like, I don't tell you, like, performances are amazing. Everything we just said, we're giving it a 10, I'm pretty sure. And I think rightly so. It's earned that. It's got it nails every single point that it needs to. Again, like, yeah, based on the source material, but even beyond that, it's just from start to finish, like you said, bookended amazingly well, and just there's so much to it. There's so much substance there, and there's so much this is a very long episode, so I'll try to pan it down. But yeah, I recommend it strongly. One of the best 5 films I've seen this year, like you said, Chris. 100%. Boom.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that this should be getting some Oscar noms this year. For certainly Chadwick and Viola Davis, I think should both be nominated. But yeah, it's a great movie. Granted, there are going to be people that don't like it based on the fact that it has based on some people are racist, and then there are going to be people that don't like it because it's stage play style, and I can understand that. I'll still recommend it to those people though. Whatever, hey, I think you should watch this. Maybe it'll change your mind as to how you feel about things that feel like plays. But yeah, I'm all right with a 10 on this, and yeah, that's gonna be my recommendation.
I would also recommend it to racists. It might change some things because everyone can enjoy music and everyone can, like Cornell West soul. We can all get together and enjoy some blues and jazz. So, yeah, full recommendation from me. I loved it.
Yeah, I adored this movie. If you, again, I have to keep apologizing because I feel like I'm, riding, I'm bouncing around because I love this movie. I just absolutely adore it. I'm going to recommend it to everybody. And just in case, I got my book here. If you're watching on YouTube, hopefully you can see this picture of Ma Rainey, because apparently there's not a lot of them out on the internet.
Use that one in the film, I believe. Like at the very end of the film, they had a shot of that. Yeah.
Bill Wyman's Blues Odyssey, yes. But yeah, I adored this movie. I recommend it to everybody, and I know this might, even some ivory tower liberals might get a little uncomfortable realizing that the North wasn't the perfect utopia after the Civil War.
Jazz studio.
I think they might be more upset that music studios are disparaged in this way.
The Spotify execs are furious about this.
Yeah, the Spotify execs are furious. Well, I heard it's because, never mind. I'm not going to go there. So anyway, it looks like we're all giving it a 10.
Fucking A.
I was going to say something about being a doctor or not being a doctor, but I'll leave that one alone.
Don't.
Yeah. Ian got it. Yeah, if nobody's got anything to add,
go watch this film.
Watch the fucking
go out, watch this film. And again, I definitely watch this film, watch the making of, and definitely do your research. As somebody who went on his own Blues Odyssey when he was learning the blues and guitar, there's so many stories, so many unsung stories like Ma Rainey's out there. And as a musician, you cannot. It's so funny. Everybody's like talking about Christian rock. Well, it's just like, well, blues is based on gospel. So and blues basically paved the way for everything else. So essentially everything's Christian music, if you want to look at it that way. But yeah, it's a great movie, and I highly, highly recommend, again, further research on blues musicians that helped shape this country and music so much. And with that, I have been Chris Morgan here with my bandmates, Stephen Hermosi.
Have a good night.
Jonathan Ian Manzer.
I liked Black. Have a good night. I flubbed the line.
And Scott Thurlow.
I tried to make a deal with the devil, but he said no matter how much I help you, you still don't have enough talent. So here I am. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Peace and long life.
Editing and engineering by Christopher Morgan. Music by Christopher Morgan. Check us out on YouTube and iTunes for the shows, and on Facebook and Twitter for updates.
Or Mott's?